Welcome to your final segment. In this segment, we're going to put it all together and I'm going to walk you through some of those poses that I typically use with my clients to get those genuine emotions. As always, it stands to be stated that this will not 100% be what you should do in every single session. You need to go out there and read your clients. Understand that every person is different, every situation is different, and so it is up to you to find the best positioning and the best place for your clients. With that, let's start. As I've said before, I typically like to get my clients as uncomfortable as possible, but that doesn't mean that I start with them sitting down or laying on the ground or even getting them into strange positions. No, typically I start with them standing. Standing, as we walked through during your body segment, is where they're going to be the most comfortable. They're going to be the most able to maneuver. And also, if you have a larger body type, this is going to be the easiest way to hide and manipulate the way that their body looks. Through all of these standing poses, I'm going to walk you through static poses, dynamic poses, and a combination of the two. Like I said, I call it dynamic. One disclaimer as we go into these poses, I'm going to refer to it as groom and bride. That doesn't mean that you can't apply this to a groom and bride situation. I'll also be using pronouns that refer to she and he, but we are all inclusive of love. So while it says bride and groom, use this at your own discretion with your couples. The first standing pose that I like to have my couples do is when they wrap their arms around one another. It's usually easiest if the bride puts her arms underneath the armpits of the guy and then he wraps her up almost into a snuggle. There are lots of things that you can do here, especially prompt-wise. You can ask them to have a kiss attack up and down each other's cheeks, whisper one's favorite dessert but in a Cookie Monster voice, smell their hair and make sure that they've showered today. All of those will elicit a great kind of laughter and genuine smile that you might not get just asking them to look right at the camera. Another way to do this is to have the groom stand in front and the bride behind. If they turn to the side, actually like 90 degrees away from the camera, the bride again wraps her arms underneath his armpits and snuggles into his back. I love it when I ask my brides to take a deep breath and remember why they fell in love with their guy. It usually ends up with a peek over the shoulder because he wants to see what their face looks like. So getting those emotions out is what's going to create those genuine photographs. Again, that's what we want. We want to evoke those emotions. The second one that I like to do is when my bride and groom are face to face with one another. When they face one another, their hips should be pressing into one another so that they almost are balancing against each other. Use the clock method, which you learned in segment 4, and have them work their way with their hands up until they are holding onto one another's faces. Shift their hands further back by asking them to play an imaginary keyboard until their hands are in one another's hair. You can have the groom brush the hair away from her face. You can also ask them to go in slowly with smiles for kisses. Sometimes their teeth will hit each other. That's okay too, guys. It ends up again with giggles and laughter. You can have them stare into one another's eyes and then trace their jawlines up and down, up and down. But this one is my absolute favorite when they're face to face. Have them face one another, have them look at each other, and then ask them, what do you think it will feel like 50 years from now to look back on this moment and remember where you were and how you felt? Don't rush this. Don't force them out of it. Let them feel the emotions that come. You can also ask them, if you find a couple that's super humorous instead of super emotional, you can also ask them to tell one another what their favorite body part is or what they love most about one another. Just make sure that if you're doing this, that they whisper it to one another. Whispers equal secrets. Secrets equal trust. Trust equals confidence. And that's what you want your couples to feel when they're in these poses. This one is super fun. The closed eye kiss. Get your couples super close together, about a foot apart from each other. with their arms wrapped around each other's elbows. Make them close their eyes, and then tell them to smile until they kiss. They're gonna miss, and inevitably it creates this moment where they're holding on and pulling away from one another at the same time giggling. Guys, you can't get more genuine than that kind of moment. I love this one. The catch and release is what I call it. Remember the movie The Notebook, where Allie talks about if you're a bird, I'm a bird? If you haven't seen it, pause right here, find that scene. They're on the beach and she caws like a bird and runs towards him. Every romantic at heart knows this scene, and they also know the joy behind it. Asking your couple to recreate this usually gets the bride super giggly with excitement, because recreating that kind of true love is something that's really going to make them feel authentic joy. I call this one the airplane. Have the bride stand in front of the groom. He'll reach out and put her hands into his. Ask him to make the sound of an airplane while he flies her around. Laughter ends up happening every time. You can ask him to snuggle his nose into the side of her cheek, especially if you tell him this without her knowing what's going to happen. Guys, a lot of these poses will be really great if you can actually pull a bride or groom aside, tell them what to do, and not let the other one expect it. Also, this is a really easy way to have them snuggle together. After the airplane is done, have the bride wrap her arms right around her, snuggling him in close. It ends up where they create this cute little bundle of joy. Their noses together, their foreheads together, they're giggling, their laughter, they're kissing. Everything that comes from this is just pure magic. The side-by-side pose. I love this pose just for a sense of connectivity. We want to make sure that our couples are connected at all times. And what does that mean? That means that they are actually touching one another. This pose can be really great for ring shots. Have the groom stand next to the bride, but he faces away. She'll loop her arm through his shoulder and then grab on with the other hand. Make sure that the ring is showing. From there, she can either place her head on his shoulder, he can kiss her forehead, they can snuggle their foreheads together, their noses can come together with an Eskimo kiss. You can have them making out. It's a beautiful pose though, and especially if you want to get close to that ring and get a shot with just that focus and their smiles in the background. Oh, chef's kiss, y'all. Oh, the faux dip. I love this one. Have the bride and groom stand face to face. The bride throws her hands over his shoulders, tilting her pelvis forward into the pelvis of the groom. That sounds really funny, but this actually forces the groom to support her on her waist and in her back. So all of the balance is dependent on the groom here. The bride will put one toe back, and that toe will be the only thing that she really balances on. It also creates the triangles that we always are looking for. You can have her dip down further. He goes in for a kiss. She can look at the camera and he could snuggle in. Another way to do this is to have them run towards each other dirty dancing style, but instead of a lift, she'll just throw her arms over his eyes and then they spin. Make sure that you take a lot of shots to catch what you want. But again, the laughter with that is incredible. This one requires a wall or a fence. Have the groom or bride, either or, this works for either of them, put their back up against the wall or the fence. Raise one foot so that they have to balance against it. Without letting the other person hear, pull the other person to the side and ask them to seduce her or him. Whether it means grabbing onto their collar, running their hands through their hair, whatever it means to that particular couple, it's going to create that moment that you're looking for. Just a note with this one, leave it until the end of a session because it takes a little more trust to really be yourself in front of the camera when somebody tells you to seduce your partner. The face to shoulder. This should have a really intimate feel to it. Squeezes end up creating laughter and smiles, but coming apart a little ways and having her just take that opposite arm up to his jawline will really create that intimacy, that moment that you feel like you're in it. You can also have this be a great time to whisper things in the ear, kiss the temple, the nose, the hair, the head. the neck. Have them love on one another. It might be the most kisses that they get for a week, but they're never going to forget those moments that you help them feel a part of. So we've talked a little bit about standing still poses. We're going to get a little more into walking poses. These are some of my favorite. Again, if you have a couple that can't get out of their head, get them moving, get them in motion, and you're going to find that you can go back to those standing poses after you've gotten them walking for a minute. Here we go. Have the bride and groom hold hands. Ask her to walk the tightrope like we talked about in our posing segment on your hips and your legs. And make sure that you mention that you want a hip sway from her. You can ask her to almost walk like a model. It will look ridiculous and feel ridiculous to her, and that's okay. A really great way to get them out of their head too, tell the guy that you do not want his hips to sway at all. He'll giggle, she'll giggle, they'll be able to move easier. I love to create walking poses utilizing a drunk bumping contest. I've had couples who have showed up before who have been drunk, but this is supposed to be where you make it up. So they're gonna act like they're drunk. Holding hands, they bump into each other, hair is going to fly, they're going to get out of their heads and into their hearts. Have the groom wrap his arm around the bride's shoulder, and she holds his hand with her hand. Her arm around his waist, his other hand into the pocket. This will create a sense of really intimate moments with the bride and groom. Have them, as you do this, walk towards you, and then after a while, stop them. Then we're going to do a hip bumping contest. This can get a little painful, so make sure that you tell them not to hurt each other. But as they walk, they go opposite and bump together, opposite, bump together. It again will create all kinds of laughter. As they walk, have the bride take a step out in front. She leads her groom away slowly. One step, look back. Another step, look back. You can also do this with both hands and have her pull him into her so that he wraps around her waist. Have him snuggle into her as they walk. Smell her hair, get a little kiss on her neck, things of that sort. Again, it might feel awkward. It looks amazing. The final one, as they walk, have them dance with one another. He twirls her, he dips her, he brings her up for a kiss. A twirl, a dip, a kiss. A twirl, a dip, a kiss. If it goes like that, then they end up again in that authentic moment. Another thing I love to do with walking poses are lifts. Making sure that you can actually lift up the bride in some of your poses is really great. And if you have a larger couple who can't lift, find an area where they actually have separate levels and you'll be able to create these same poses in that same manner. Have the bride sit on top of the groom's shoulders. Once you actually get a couple of pictures of them, have him twirl her. Then stop them when they're right in front of you and try to kiss one another. It's nearly impossible, but it makes for this adorable moment between the two of them. The second lift. Have the groom wrap his arms completely underneath the bride's booty, interlocking his arms, one elbow to one elbow, so that he has a steady backing. Once he lifts her up, her backhand goes around his neck, and then the front hand goes onto his chest. If you really want a romantic moment, pop a foot, and then again, swing around, have them twirl, have him pretend like he's dropping her. You can have the groom barrel carry his bride, swooping her up in his arms. She can throw her head back and her arms out so that it's the happiest moment that you possibly can see on film. I love this one. When the groom runs up from behind, swipes around her waist and picks her up and swings her around. It's almost like a sneak attack that she doesn't know is happening. Piggybacking is always a great option. You can have the knees wrapped just around the waist, or you can have the legs wrapped completely in front, depending on the size of your bride. You can also create the same images as a piggyback by stepping onto a rock and being higher and lower than each other. The final portion of these poses are sitting down and laying down poses. It's essential that you understand that with laying down poses, we want to make sure that the chin is not the focus. A lot of times you will have to ask your couples to turtle it. What do I mean by turtling? You can see even on camera, once in a while I get a double chin, and that's because my neck is back. When I say turtle, what I mean by that is that you will ask your couple to actually take their face and bring it forward like this. When we turtle, it gives our chin a natural lift, allowing that photograph to feel like that's the way that someone looks when they're laying down, while really, typically what ends up happening is our necks go back. Okay, let's get into some of those poses. Have your couple lay down on the ground. Their heads are on opposite sides. This allows them to turn cheek to cheek. You can also have your couple one lay on top of the other. And I don't mean like flat on top of the other one, but what I do mean is that it's almost like they're snuggling against each other. The bride will lay her head onto his shoulder and she wraps her knee up and around. This is very typical of people who snuggle when they're in bed, and it creates a really intimate moment. I like to have my couples laying down on their stomachs side by side as well. This gives it where you can have the groom kiss the ring, lift their feet up. These are very adorable, cute photographs that you can get. If the groom is willing, a really fun thing to do is to have them do a push-up contest. Have the bride do push-ups, have the groom do push-ups, but then have the bride actually lay on top of the groom while he tries to do push-ups. It can be really funny. Sometimes the bride will fall off, do it in a grassy area, but really, really adorable. When you have your client sit, it's key that it feels comfortable. I always preface sitting ones with saying that it's going to be a little bit of a core workout. Unless we actually have something that the bride and groom can sit up against, the groom is going to have to support the two of them in order for it to be really emotive. I ask my brides to always keep their legs at a 90-degree angle so that we're not seeing up a dress or through a skirt. It creates a very ladylike image, and it allows them, again, to get snuggly and close. You can change up the position of them sitting. You can also have one client sit while the other one crouches behind and snuggles in and wraps their arms around. You can have it where you actually have someone sitting on their lap. All of these are amazing options. Make sure that you utilize the clock method during these and some of those prompts that we talked about.